Thank you and good morning. We are now ready to start our Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. I understand that the state law currently requires that the following announcement be made at the beginning of every remote public hearing as follows. Due to the current public health emergency, the City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notice that are published in the Daily News, Inquirer, Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearing and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. Before we get started, I'd like everybody to please mute your phones or now the hour has come. Mr. McMonagle, will you please call the roll to take action to members that are in attendance, and will please indicate that you are present when your name is called. Also, please say a few brief words of when responding so your image will be displayed on the screen. Mr. McMonagle?
Councilwoman Brooks?
Good morning. Good morning, council members.
Councilman Dom?
Good morning, Chairman Squilla and colleagues and the public and Sean.
Councilwoman Gautier?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Happy to be here today.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues.
Councilman Green? Councilman Johnson? Councilman Jones?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, viewing public.
Councilman O?
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, colleagues.
And Councilman Squilla?
Good morning and present. Thank you, Mr. McMonagle. A quorum of the committee is present and the hearing is now called to order. This is a public hearing on the Committee of Commerce and Economic Development regarding bills number 200574, 200544, and 200353. For the record, bill number 200382 is being held at the request of the sponsor and will not be heard at today's hearing. Mr. McMonagle, will you please read the titles of the bills?
Good morning. Bill number 200574, amending Title IX of the Philadelphia Code to address matters related to commercial leases and provide eviction and financial relief to restaurant businesses that operate on leased premises, all under certain terms and conditions. And Bill number 200544, amending Title IX of the Philadelphia Code entitled Regulation of Businesses, Trades, and Professions by adding a new chapter entitled Residential Property Wholesalers to regulate the solicitation of purchase of real property and require certain disclosures by property purchasers to homeowners, and amending Chapter 9-1100 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Fair Practice Ordinances, Protections Against Unlawful Discrimination to provide protections to homeowners from solicitation and related problems, all under certain terms and conditions. And Bill number 200353, amending Section 17-109 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Local Bidding Preferences to amend reporting requirements to require that the establishment of local business usage goals and reporting on reaching such goals as a way to assist community businesses to recover from COVID-19 pandemic, all under certain terms and conditions.
Mark.
Thank you. Sorry about that, guys. Before we begin to hear testimony from the witnesses we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that the public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for the questions or comments they have for witnesses, I will note that for the record, at this time, we will use the chat feature available on Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized in order to comply with the Sunshine Act. The chat feature must only be used for this purpose. Mr. McMonagle, will you please call the first panel or witnesses that have to testify. After you call them, if there's any participants who would like to make a comment.
Bill number 200574. Can we please have Melissa Bova?
Morning, can you hear me? Okay. Good morning.
Yes, we hear you. Yes, just for the record too, Councilmember Thomas is also present. Thank you. Go ahead, Melissa, if you want to state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Yes, thank you. My name is Melissa Bova. I'm Vice President of Government Affairs at the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association. Councilman Squilla and members of the Commerce and Economic Development Committee, thank you for allowing me to testify today in support of Bill number 200574 and an amendment that is expected to be considered in committee. I would like to thank Councilman Heenan for sponsoring this legislation. As you know, 7 months into the COVID crisis, the restaurant industry continues to struggle, with more and more businesses closing permanently every day. 66% of the industry doesn't expect to be open in 6 months without financial assistance. And for those who make it 6 more months, 78% don't expect their sales to be back in the block. Our industry did the right thing from the beginning. We closed our doors for in-house dining and struggled through what would have been one of our most prosperous seasons via takeout. In the beginning, many, not all, landlords gave businesses a reprieve on rent. Following that, as businesses received PPP funds, they were able to make a small dent in the rent they owe. Unfortunately, the PPP funds dried up months ago, and the restaurant industry continues to struggle. Bill number 200574 is designed not to absolve restaurants of their rent payments, but to give them the opportunity to get through the crisis and pay back rents as soon as they are able, with a cap that they must be paid within 1 year of the emergency declaration concluding. Further, the bill ensures that late fees and penalties will not be assessed on those who are making late payments. An ability to catch up means nothing if the fees and penalties are so high, a restaurant can't dig out of that hole. Finally, the bill specifies that only restaurants that have lost more than 50% of their revenue because of the COVID crisis would be eligible for this protection. We're not looking for blanket assistance for the industry, because while most are struggling, not everyone is, and this bill specifies that those who have been impacted the most should benefit from this protection. Restaurants want to come out of this crisis. They are doing the best they can to be creative and mobile while protecting guests and their employees. But we would be naive not to recognize that the hardship is not over. This legislation goes a long way in ensuring that those restaurants that have commercial leases have the ability to pay back their rent and not be evicted while they try to do so. Thank you for allowing me to testify today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Melissa, for your testimony. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Seeing none. Mr. Ronald, will you please read the next panel or witnesses testify?
Donald Nagowski. See you on. You're
Don, I
muted.
think you're muted. Don, I think you're muted.
Seems
There you
I'm
go.
there we go. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Don. Just state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
Certainly, my name
Before
is.
you start, I'm sorry, I just recognized that Councilmember Green is present for the hearing for the record. Thank you. Go ahead, Don. Please just state your name again for the record and then begin with your testimony.
Thank you. Again, my name is Donald Nagowski, and I'm CFO and General Counsel of the Marquee Restaurant Group, which includes Hip City Veg, fast casual restaurants, and a couple of full-service restaurants, Bar Bonbon and Charlie Was a Sinner. I'm very familiar with the financial devastation that COVID has enacted upon our industry. Fortunately, Hip City Veg, as a fast casual, has been able to rely on delivery and takeout to a greater extent. And Bar Bonbon and Charlie have benefited from outdoor dining. However, the great majority of restaurants in Philadelphia have not been able to fare as well. Many are operating at well below 50%. I'm hearing 25% a lot of times. While we're all still struggling with the fact that there is far reduced traffic, in the city, far reduced foot traffic, and it's not likely that's going to change anytime between now and the spring anyway. We have to recognize that keeping our infrastructure of restaurants alive through this pandemic is essential. In the short term, restaurants employ in the city thousands of people, and most of them right now are unable to pay full rent. If those restaurants do close or they're evicted, all those people will be out of work, which means the following month they won't be able to pay their residential rent as well, and they won't be able to feed their families. Restaurants pay out, at least 90, if not 100% of every dollar they take in salaries, food, and rent. It's well documented. We have to be able to keep these businesses alive and forestall foreclosures throughout the winter. Long term, it's also beneficial to the city because one day the sun will rise. This pandemic will end, maybe not this year, maybe next summer, but whenever it ends, we're going to want to have a vibrant restaurant industry. A vibrant restaurant industry is part of Philadelphia's identity. And without having that, if all these restaurants are evicted and closed, in the near term, we're destroying infrastructure. These places will not be there to reopen at the end of the pandemic. So it's an essential public function to try to preserve this infrastructure, keep these businesses alive until this pandemic abates a bit so that some level of normalcy can occur. Now, it doesn't mean I'm unsympathetic to landlords. In addition to my work with Hip City, I'm a practicing attorney with a law firm of Earp Cohn PC in Philadelphia, and I represent landlords. I know that they're struggling as well. Their tenants aren't paying them. They still have mortgages. Their mortgage companies don't want to hear excuses either. By City Council taking this action, this will give landlords, by having a council bill to point to, the ability to negotiate, in good faith and better with their mortgage holders and say, listen, my tenant is doing the best they can. They're only paying perhaps taxes and operating expenses. They can't pay anything else right now. I'm not permitted to evict them under law. So give me some help with your mortgage, with the mortgage company. Again, after we get through this short-term eviction hiatus, so to speak, is essential. But after we get through that, we might want to look at what DC has done. They have an interesting approach where while they forestall both residential and commercial evictions related to COVID, they also mandated that lenders and landlords and tenants engage in good faith negotiations to come up with solutions long term. That's resulted in a lot of deals down in DC where rent was abated for 12 months, 18 months. Perhaps taxes and insurance are paid for a period of time during that period, so landlords can at least cover their expenses. And then the rent that's deferred is then paid out over the next several years. So there are some solutions. There is no perfect solution. Again, longer term, we're going to be back asking council to consider making street closures permanent and expanding them. They have been a lifeline to many restaurants and permitting a lot more restaurants to pay rent and avoid eviction by doing so. So with that, I thank you for the time to speak with you, and I do ask that you support this bill to forestall evictions of restaurants.
Thank you, Donald. And I know a couple members have some questions. Real quick on the DC model, is it a requirement that they have negotiations, or is it just a good faith effort from the landlord and tenants to work together to come up with a plan?
in the event that a tenant doesn't believe that the landlord negotiated in good faith, there is a grievance procedure to file with the city, and there is a body that will determine whether the landlord negotiated in good faith. So there's a little bit of a hammer that causes both sides to be reasonable.
All right, so it works like through Commerce or some other governmental agency to oversee it. All right, Councilmember Jones, I see that you have a question. All right, if Councilmember Jones is not, oh, there he is.
Here, sorry.
That's okay.
All right, very quickly, a lot of the, most recently, there have been mandates that say what the type of internal operations of a restaurant can be if they are using enclosures of 6 feet apart. These types of improvements, along with the outdoor purchasing of tables, the outdoor purchasing of heat lamps, how are these investments being treated by way of the city? Are we considering those kinds of investments in a tax deferral way?
I'm not aware of any proposal to do that. We certainly are using, and restaurants need to continue to use plexiglass dividers, outdoor enclosures, heaters, all of which cost tens of thousands of dollars and presents significant logistics, especially, for example, at our locations where street closures are only 3 days a week or 4 days a week. We have to break down and set up, and there's no ability to create anything permanent. Again, using DC as a model, DC has enacted $10,000 grant programs for restaurants to help cover investments in things like heat lamps and enclosures and plexiglass. Anyone who has an outdoor seating permit in DC is eligible to apply for that. And many of our restaurant brothers and sisters down there have applied for it. And it's been very helpful to them.
So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if the City of Philadelphia's license and inspection department or the Commerce Department is keeping track of temporary street closures and their impact on traffic patterns, bus routes, whatever. But if we can get that kind of data given to you, we can make better decisions about the permanency of street closures and be able to give some predictability to some of the restaurants, because I toured Main Street in my district, and I would imagine it might be the same for Passyunk in yours, that some of them are doing better than Center City restaurants because of their circumstances. And if that is true, that a Main Street or a Passyunk Avenue might be a prototype that allows for us to make better decisions long-term about these closures and give the restaurants predictability about revenue. If I'm open today, I have to close it tomorrow due to weather or restrictions by the City of Philadelphia, new red zone, green zone determinations. It's kind of hard to plan your financial future and more or less investments to create plastic enclosures. So if we could get some data that can give us better information about the impacts of these closures, I think we can make better decisions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones. And I know Sylvie from Commerce has given written testimony, but they are working on some programs. And if you look at New York has done sort of a outreach to see how they could do sort of permanent outdoor dining options out there. They did a pretty neat plan where they put out for bid and ideas of what would work, what wouldn't work. And so I think all these things are something that we should look at as a city. And, Philadelphia is unique, but I mean, if something is working somewhere else, why reinvent the wheel? And let's copy those good ideas, but also make it into a Philadelphia feel. So I think these are all great opportunities, and looking forward to working with Commerce L&I, health department, and everybody with the restaurant industry to come up with ways to make sure we adapt to these, changing times. So thank you very much. I know Councilmember. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, one other thought, that if we have PPA parking authority lots on different corridors that could be converted temporarily into outdoor dining areas in the spring, or city-owned lots, land lots that can be improved to give a commercial corridor outdoor seating options, we should have them give us an inventory of those things as well.
Councilman, that's a very good point, and that's exactly what we did down in D.C. as well. I worked with the D.C. Department of Transportation, who had proposed certain changes to traffic patterns and establishing seating area for restaurants in a city-owned parking garage, for example. So there's a lot of creativity. Let's face it, traffic in the city is down, car traffic. The parking demand is down. No one knows exactly when that's going to change. But we do have assets in the city we can use. And I'm sure working with the traffic folks, we can find ways to route traffic around the kind of streets you described, Councilman, to permit a more permanent restaurant approach that maintains social distancing and safety and permits restaurants to invest tens of thousands of dollars to have structures and tents and heaters and things like that. So the industry would love to work with council and love to look at what they've done in other cities to come up with something that works.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Gautier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is for whomever on the panel can answer it. I wanted to get a sense of how many restaurants we'd be helping with the bill. Does anyone know how many restaurants in the city would fall into this category of having lost 50% of revenue and less than 100 employees?
I can answer that question, Councilwoman. We don't have specific data. I can tell you that the vast majority are going to be your full service restaurants that are going to be eligible for this, and they have commercial leases. Nobody owns their own building in Philadelphia.
Melissa, just state your name. Just state your name again as you answer. I'm sorry.
Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association. So you're really looking at your full service restaurants that are going to be most impacted. Your fast food, all of them wouldn't be eligible. They haven't seen the revenue impact. So that's really what we're looking at in terms of assistance with this piece of legislation.
I would suggest the number is at least 75% of full service restaurants in Philadelphia from my own discussions with fellow restaurateurs.
And I think we could also ask Commerce for that. I'm sure as we go through, and maybe Commerce could be able to provide a synopsis of that and get that data to the committee so that we could share it. Thank you.
Can I jump in here? Sorry, Ellen Yen, owner of High Street Hospitality Group. We operate 5 restaurants: Fork, High Street Provisions in Franklin Court in West Philadelphia, A Kitchen and A Bar in Rittenhouse Square. And, I would fully agree with what Don and Melissa just said, that the majority of full service restaurants are the ones that are the most heavily hit. And first, thank you so much for allowing me to testify in support of this bill. But we all in the industry appreciate all the efforts that City Council and the City of Philadelphia have made for the Philadelphia hospitality industry. Some of our restaurants have benefited tremendously from the outdoor street closures, like A Kitchen. But even with that outdoor closure and being able to, on some weekends, get have as much revenue as we would typically might have pre-COVID, it doesn't make up for how much has been lost from March until, August. A Kitchen probably, is seeing a 40% loss. Fork, which, we're on Market Street. We don't have any street closure that is convenient for us to participate in. And let's face it, we're in a commercial corridor. And Old City is a neighborhood that is very based on small business, on tourism, on hospitality and destination, of which we all know the impact of COVID on all those markets. Fork is the one struggling the most. We had 2 leases because we had 2 properties joined together. We were able to negotiate rent abatement with one of our landlords, but the other landlord was not willing to budge a penny. And with the prospect of not having any private dining or, our bakery, relocating, I was actually in a lucky position that my lease ended because the person with whom we had a relationship is not a flexible landlord. And I understand that they have commitments as well. So I thought that Don's suggestions were excellent with regard to the fact that this bill would allow landlords to be able to negotiate with their banks and their mortgage holders. But restaurants put in, especially full-scale restaurants like Vernick or Fork or some of these gems that, have been Philadelphia classics. We put millions of dollars of leasehold improvements into our facilities. I've been at Market Street almost 23 years. I guarantee I've put over $2 million in investment into those properties. And, in terms of how much money I've paid in rent, just of the High Street property, I know I've paid over $1 million in rent. This past year, they increased our rent by $60,000, which was over 50% of our prior year rent. And, I do feel a little bit resentful because then on the exit, when I closed my lease, I had to rip everything out. Not only was it an emotional rip out, but it was it cost probably $50,000 to have to transition everything out and find a new location and do all that. So restaurants are not in a good position. There's a huge amount of uncertainty going into the winter with regard to consumer behavior and whether people will even go out under 50 degrees or not. So although we've invested in an enclosure for all our properties that is feasible, we don't know how much more money we want to invest in that if people aren't going to come out and want to sit in, in 50-degree weather. With all the heat lamps and everything, if you really want to do it right, you need the whole permitting process. You need an architect. You need the electrical permits. You need to run the electric out to the street. That's a $20,000 investment potentially, which it just is a big question mark, how whether or not you could make it back. So I'm in full support of this moratorium on evictions, and any questions or ways that I can support, feel free to let me know. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you. I know Councilmember Dom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just had a question, I guess, from Melissa Bova. Have we had any examples of restaurants so far that have actually been evicted that we could have avoided?
None that have been evicted yet, but we do have examples of eviction proceedings beginning. So we are starting to see some of the landlords begin to especially for some of our commercial tenants. I know Iron Hill was supposed to testify today. They're going through that process right now. He had to jump off for another call, but we are starting to see the proceedings begin.
And so I'm just curious about this. I don't see a lot of restaurants right now in the market looking to lease properties, okay? So I'm trying to figure out what the landlords are thinking by evicting restaurant tenants when there's nobody to back them up.
We have been asking the same question. It's not like there's anybody that's going to move into that space right now.
Right.
We wish that they would work more. I don't know if they have a different end game that we don't know about. But yes, it doesn't make sense for evictions to happen. But the other concern is, of course, even if they don't evict, those fees and penalties pile up as well. So long term, restaurants could be looking at evictions even after this is over because they can't catch up from as far behind as they are right now. So this provides some certainty and gives restaurants that ability to catch up.
And I guess, what we're dealing with here is the effects of COVID, I assume, and maybe some of the violence that occurred. But if we could, when you look at the office buildings right now, 85% of our office buildings are empty. 15% are occupied. And those schools really are back. Hopefully in January, they're going to start hopefully coming back. But what we're talking about here is that all of our issues here are based on demand. We don't have the demand in the market to support retail, restaurants, and everything else. And we need, as a council, maybe we can figure out how we can get offices in a safe way reoccupied, because we need those people for this economy, and we need the universities for this economy. All these issues we're talking about are Band-Aids because of this problem. The real issue here is getting that demand back. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this is a good bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Council Member O?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have more of a comment which could draw a response than I do a question, but I do support the bill. Let me just say that first of all. What I do find problematic is that there's a great inconsistency, between Philadelphia and the surrounding counties. I live right next to Delaware County, and when the restaurants were closed in this city, I've discovered all kinds of new places in Delaware County where I take my family and we have a dinner, we sit down, we engage in conversation and all those things. Limited seating, they spread out the space. I don't really understand absolutely, the benefits of having such a different policy here in the city and right next door in our surrounding counties. I also don't understand exactly the great benefits. I understand there's some benefits of basically sitting indoors, outdoors, like putting up a tent and then sitting in it with heat, like you're duplicating indoors, outdoors. Would it not just be better to kind of regulate the existing, restaurants? They can't all have outdoor seating. They all can't set up tents. They have access to bathrooms and sanitation and other things. So I'm not clear on those policies. What I will say is I would love to hear from the restaurant people because there is competition. There's always competition when we are, in such close proximity. There's also people who, in order to survive, tend to bend the rules or break the rules. In other words, there are people who do that in Philadelphia, and the people that get. So I'm not sure how that exactly helps. And I think that the government policy here, it's never going to make up for the industry issues. We want to be safe. We want to protect people, and people are protecting themselves. But we should let the industry somewhat have a greater role, and they can talk to us. And I mean us, I mean city council. We're very accessible. I do want to, in the future, establish a better working relationship with the administration so that we could bring some of these issues to the administration in terms of how I understand what the governor is doing. I understand, the governor is setting a policy. I'm not exactly sure how the city of Philadelphia diverges from that policy. I understand the reasoning. I hear the logic. Again, I have great issues with the fact that as Councilman Curtis Jones says, none of us are as smart as all of us, right? So put our heads together and come up with some solutions that include more input from folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones. Ellen, I think I see your hand is raised.
Yeah.
You want to respond.
Yeah. I just want to say that I fully agree with Councilman Dom with regard to creating the demand, but it's still going to be up to the consumer. And Councilman O, one of the things is that our customers don't want to eat inside. Our customers want to eat outside. They don't feel comfortable, and our staff don't feel comfortable necessarily waiting on more than 50% indoors as well. That is a huge problem with the outer counties as well as people who aren't following the rules, because I had a group the other day. They were 14 people. I sat them in tables of 4. My staff all wore shields. They would not wear their mask when they were not eating or drinking. And they told me that another restaurant down the street allowed them to dine without their masks on. So what am I supposed to say? First of all, I had to step in because my staff didn't feel comfortable, approaching the guest. But this was an out-of-town foundation doing business in Philadelphia. They wanted to have a large group, and they didn't understand why things were different at different locations. So I fully agree that these things have to be made very clear to all the operators, and there should be some sort of penalty for not complying. But then again, I know I'm losing business to the suburbs, and I have to figure out this winter. That's my biggest challenge. How am I going to get my product out to my customer? Thank you.
Thank you.
Don, I see your hand is raised physically.
Thank you. Councilman, you are correct that the city restaurants have lost a lot of business to our suburban competitors. Regulation and enforcement of regulation, and I would probably emphasize enforcement more, has been certainly much more lax in the suburbs. As Ellen said, there are some clients and customers that will not sit inside, that don't want to sit inside, but there are some that do. I've seen it, I've experienced it. I've done it myself if I thought it was being done in a safe manner. So as long as social distancing and or barriers are maintained, and the restaurant is, staff is working appropriately, there is a demand, I think, for at least 50% occupancy. Our experience has been so far, if it's 70 degrees out, most people will want to sit outside. If it's 50 degrees or 55 degrees, a lot more will accept sitting inside as an option if safety and social distancing is being maintained. And as to what both Councilman O and Councilman Dom mentioned, you're right. We have to have safe environments. We have to have people feel safe that it's okay to come back to their offices. From our investigation, it appears that air quality is a significant issue. Being able to ensure that there's, for example, at least 6 air exchanges per hour has been shown to promote air safety. Having filtration and UVC lighting and other things, which are things that we're implementing in our restaurants. We're putting special standalone air filtration systems that cost thousands of dollars into our sit-down restaurants. Perhaps having some program to help businesses finance and pay for that equipment to help office buildings and owners, maybe something through PIDC, some type of special financing, if grants aren't possible, to help office building owners create a safe environment. Because you're right, if office workers don't come back, we're all going to have to redo our model here, I think.
Thank you, Don, and thank you all for your testimony. Obviously, this is not the answer to solve every problem. We have a lot more work to do, and continue to work with the industry and with commerce and the city departments to try to come up with some more options and opportunities for our businesses. Council Member Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this dialogue. And I want to thank the bill sponsor for this legislation. I have a brief question regarding what other forms of assistance we can offer from a city perspective for the industry around restaurant regulations, specifically around the outdoor regulations. I heard from some restaurant owners recently that they were fined by the city over the height of their umbrellas, for instance. So what other assistance can we offer to all of you to ensure we all know what the rules and regulations are in this moment so that we are not further impacting you in this very difficult moment?
Well, I can start.
Just state your name again, Melissa.
Melissa Bova with the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association. Yes, enforcement's weird right now. And we're seeing kind of $75 tickets for umbrellas are a half an inch too short, but that's because the sidewalk isn't level. And people are getting fined for something like that. We are seeing people that are getting fined because they have outdoor string lights and they're getting fined for things like that. So I think that there's in an ability for the city to keep outdoor seating safe and the street closures safe, I think that there is some over enforcement that's occurring without kind of in the back of their mind thinking, okay, maybe we don't need to do all of this and assess all these fines on businesses that are struggling for items that really aren't concerning. So, for example, you need 6 feet of distance on a sidewalk. If that's 5 3/4 feet, we're seeing people get fined. So there seems to be a lack of that kind of common sense. Are they purposefully breaking the rules, or is it a mistake, or is it something that can be fixed, or is it something that's just really not worth that type of overzealous enforcement? And we have actually requested a meeting with the city to talk through some of those items, because at a time like this, I can tell you, it's very frustrating when I have a restaurateur call me because they've been fined with two $75 tickets for reasons that just are mind-boggling to me. So yes, that's a huge thing that we would love to work with you on. And as the chairman said, this bill is not going to fix everything. It's a good step, and we still have a long ways to go. And we still would like to have a number of conversations with all of you, how we can bring this industry back, because I know on behalf of the industry, we want to come back from this.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that response. And we'll definitely follow up with you. But I've heard this from multiple business owners. I've been out in the community over the past several weekends, and I heard this from quite a few owners around the fines that they were receiving, specifically around sidewalk space, height of umbrellas, and that was concerning. So thank you very much for that feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your input in this on this bill. Seeing that there's no other questions, Mr. McMonagle, you read the next witness?
Yes, could we please have Kim Barima?
If Kim is not available, Kim, if she's not there, Sean, read the title next.
We'll go on to bill number 200544. And can we have Kate Dugan, please, who I understand is going to share her screen?
Good morning. Can you see and hear me? So I'll be sharing my screen. CLS will be giving testimony, and then we have video testimony of a former client. So good morning, members of the committee. My name is Kate Dugan. I'm an attorney in the Homeownership and Consumer Rights Unit at Community Legal Services, and I'm really pleased to testify in support of Council Bill 200544 today. As Council knows, Community Legal Services was established by the Philadelphia Bar Association in 1966 to provide civil legal representation to low-income Philadelphians. As the city's largest provider of free legal services, CLS assists approximately 12,000 of Philadelphia's poorest residents every year with their legal problems. In the past several years, homeowners in the city have felt increasingly harassed, annoyed, and threatened by repeated unwelcome communication from people offering to buy their houses in quick cash deals. These are the same people who plaster our city with "We Buy Houses" signs, illegally bolted to telephone poles and street signs. These residential property wholesalers use high-pressure and deceptive sales techniques to convince homeowners to sell their homes for far less than market value. Many homeowners, including many of our clients, have been victims of these predatory and aggressive techniques. They are being dragged into court to perform under contracts they didn't understand or that they signed after being subjected to high-pressure sales techniques. Often, wholesalers target our most vulnerable residents: seniors, those who can't read or speak English, heirs who are still grieving lost family members, and those who are at risk of mortgage or tax foreclosure. Typically, these wholesalers, who operate largely anonymously behind layers of LLCs, are not the ones buying someone's house. Instead, they make an offer to a person to buy their house and then turn around and assign that agreement of sale or sell that agreement of sale to somebody else for a higher price. The homeowner is left with far less than their house is worth, and the wholesaler walks away with tens of thousands of dollars in profit. That profit represents equity that's been built up over generations and decades, and that suddenly gets stripped away with the stroke of a pen. Nationally, as members of this committee are probably aware, there's a dramatic wealth gap between Black and white households. The median Black household has only the wealth of a median white household. Predatory home buyers are an especially acute threat to Black homeowners and Black communities, whose family wealth is more likely to be tied to their family home, and who therefore stand to lose so much more by being duped into signing away their home. Philadelphia has historically been a city where families of all income levels could achieve home ownership and build intergenerational wealth. This is becoming less true in many areas of the city, increasingly putting home ownership out of reach for many families, especially lower income ones. Many people who sell their homes to predatory buyers find that they don't have any good options for staying in their communities after they sell, and often will not have the chance to purchase another home and start building wealth again. CLS has long believed that the most affordable housing for most people is the home they're in. Keeping Philadelphians in their homes right now, or if they want to relocate, making sure they get fair prices when selling, is critically important as this country enters the 8th month of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the economic security of so many of our friends and neighbors is uncertain. The good news is that thanks to the efforts of City Council, there's help for homeowners who want to stay in their communities and keep their homes. The Basic Systems Repair Program and Restore, Repair, Renew help with home repair and maintenance. City Council's investment in the nationally renowned Mortgage Foreclosure Diversion Program helps families facing foreclosure. Homeowners who are at risk of tax foreclosure have the option of paying their delinquent taxes through the owner-occupied payment. The Register of Wills, Tracy Gordon, is taking important steps to make it easier and more affordable for heirs to properly raise their loved one's estate and keep family homes in the family. A continued commitment by council to helping homeowners will further equip people to stay in their homes when they want to. Over the past year, CLS has worked with various community partners, some of whom are testifying today, to educate homeowners about their options, whether they want to sell or not. For those who do not want to sell their homes, we give them information about the programs I just discussed. For those who do want to sell their homes, we explain the importance of knowing the market value of one's home before agreeing to an offer. And we discuss the benefits of working with a real estate agent, who, unlike a wholesaler, has a duty to act in the homeowner's best interest. However, education alone isn't enough to protect vulnerable homeowners from aggressive and predatory techniques. These wholesalers operate completely outside any ethical or professional scrutiny, as they're almost never attorneys, real estate agents, or realtors. This lack of oversight allows wholesalers to operate unchecked and in whatever way makes them the most profit. This bill represents multiple approaches to the problem. Currently, if a homeowner puts a real estate agent on notice that they don't want to be solicited to sell their home, the real estate agent is prohibited under the Fair Practices Ordinance from contacting them again. This bill expands the prohibition to cover not just real estate agents, but any individual or entity. This is a simple but important step in making sure that predatory home buyers operate under the same rules as everyone else. This bill also creates a do not call list to let wholesalers know that a homeowner does not want to be contacted. Homeowners who feel annoyed or upset by constant phone calls, letters, postcards, and door hangers would finally have a tool to put a stop to these unwanted solicitations. Philadelphia community leaders and residents enthusiastically support the do not call list and are excited about the prospect of being able to put wholesalers on notice that they're not interested in selling and they want to stop being bothered. This bill requires residential property wholesalers to obtain a professional license from the city, just like many other professionals, and adhere to simple but important ethical guidelines. Importantly, the application requires that the wholesaler put an actual human name on the application form. This adds sunlight, the best disinfectant, to the wholesaler's practices and makes it easier for homeowners to track down bad actors when they need to. Residential property wholesalers would be required to provide written disclosures to homeowners at least 3 days before an agreement of sale is signed. This would allow a homeowner to think about their options and discuss those options with trusted friends and family instead of acting on misleading salesmanship from a wholesaler. Additionally, the disclosure would provide critical information about the importance of doing one's own research and determining the real market value of their home and about resources to be available if a homeowner wants to stay in their home. I'd like to close my testimony today with a video and talking about a recent community legal services client, Mr. William Weary. Mr. Weary, a father of 4, grandfather of 12 and great-grandfather of 1, moved to Philadelphia from his family farm in South Carolina in 1956 with a third-grade education and all of his belongings stuffed into a paper bag. He was 23 years old and newly married. Although he had trouble reading and only a third-grade education, Mr. Weary began working in maintenance at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. He would work there for 39 years before retiring. In retirement, he enjoyed riding horses stabled at Fairmount Park. He even owned his own horse named Joe. Mr. Weary owned a small 2-story row house near LaSalle University and received an almost daily torrent of calls as solicitations to sell his home. One day, out of curiosity, he called one of their numbers. That led to a series of high-pressure and deceptive sales tactics from a residential property wholesaler. Ultimately, he signed an agreement of sale to sell his house for about a third of what it was worth, thinking it was just a no-obligation offer. Sadly, Mr. Weary died last year. But his sister-in-law, Cynthia Taylor, was eager to testify in support of this bill. Ms. Taylor works as a full-time home health aide and was not able to attend this morning's hearing, but we have a brief video that I'd like to play of a conversation she had with my colleague, Michael Froelich. So I'm going to share my screen now.
Kate, I'm not sure. We don't have any volume on this. We could read it, but there's no volume on your screen you're sharing.
Let me try again. We did figure this out during the...
Get in touch with y'all.
There you go.
I'm going to start it over. Sorry about that.
My name is Cynthia Taylor, and I live in West Philadelphia, 64th and Master. My brother-in-law, he lived in North Philly, right off of Huntington Parkway. He had 2 homes, and someone came to the house and wanted him to sell his home. No, came to the house to ask, inquire about his home. And he didn't know what he was getting into because my brother had dementia. So he ended up signing these papers. The guy then made him sign the papers that said that he was selling the house for $500 or something. And he didn't know that. He didn't realize what he had done. And so when he did realize it, I think he got in touch with y'all because they were trying to take his homes away from him. And I don't think it's fair. I really don't think it's fair that you prey on seniors because half of them mentioned, or they're sick and they don't have no loved ones to be with them, to guide them through this. So these people that come around and post these signs and stuff really takes advantage. And I really think something should be done about it. It was an apartment, first and second floor. It was nice. It needed some work done on it and stuff. So with that, guy stayed in the place. He changed the locks on the door on him and then sent him a letter. The letter was more like a threatening letter, And when my brother-in-law realized what was going on, I think that's when he came to you. And they were trying to give him a hard way to go about it. I just don't think it's fair that they, target people with these signs and call them on the phone and tell them, you can get this and you can get that, but they're lying to them. They're really lying to them. I have the same situation with my aunt right now, where they call her up on the phone and say her house was put up for, she was trying to sell her house, in which that's a lie, and she gets calls all the time, and she also has dementia. So with me being there, I tell them don't call no more because she's not, selling her house. I don't know what we can do about it, but it needs to be stopped. he was terribly upset about it. Because he knew, after a while, he knew something wasn't right. So then again, that's when he came to you. He really was upset about it, because he didn't want to sell his property. He was really trying to work on it to see if he could, get it fixed up so he can re-rent it out. He was really sweet. He would do anything in the world for you. And I know that people hear this story all the time. He would do this and but William would. He would do anything in the world. He would give you his last. And he never tried to hurt no one. He always tried to help people. He loved his horses and cars and traveling. It was really hard on him when he got to the point he couldn't help himself anymore.
What do you think he would think about the fact that there may be a law to prevent what happened to him?
He would really love it. He would really love it, because then he knows other people is getting help and won't fall into the same trap that he fell into. I just hope that they can find a way to stop these people from doing harm to people that they prey on. I really hope they can find a solution for it.
CLS would like to thank the community groups who have worked with us on this important issue. We'd like to thank the Greater Philadelphia Association of Realtors, in whom we found strong and supportive partners and real estate professionals who want to do right by their clients and their city. We'd also like to extend its gratitude to Councilmember Dom and his staff, who have been a pleasure to work with, for championing this important issue and this important legislation. This bill is a step to preserving home ownership, increasing intergenerational wealth, and closing the wealth gap in Philadelphia. We continue to work with and we look forward to continuing to work with City Council on these issues, and I'm happy to answer any questions the council members have.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you for your testimony. Councilmember Dom?
Thank you, Chairman Squilla, and thank you for your testimony, Kate. It's great. And also, Chairman Squilla, thank you for holding this hearing today, and also for sponsoring bill number 200544. And I also like to thank my other co-sponsors on this bill, Council members Kathy Gilmore Richardson, Maria Canona Sanchez, Kenyatta Johnson, Jamie Gauthier, Sherelle Parker, Isaiah Thomas, Derek Green, Kendra Brooks, and Helen Gim. I also want to thank Community Legal Services, and thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Michael, and the Greater Philadelphia Association of Realtors, Matt Braden and Summer Job, for all their hard work and input to ensure we establish this sound policy that will protect our most vulnerable Philadelphians. And lastly, I want to thank the administration, namely the Philadelphia Commission on Human Relations, Rue Landau. Great job, Rue. And the Law Department, Russell, thank you for all your hours of work and their valuable input on this bill. Now, the goal of this legislation is to establish fair rules and expectations for these wholesalers who are buying and selling homes in our communities. When I introduced this legislation in October, I mentioned the signs we all see all over the city of Philadelphia. We buy houses signs, plastered all over telephone poles. And when we see these signs in neighborhoods all over the city, I'm very concerned that many of our residents, as we just saw in the video, are being taken advantage of in this market. Many of us in the city council have experienced working to help someone who didn't understand the process, the home buying or selling process, and unfortunately ended up losing a home that they may have rather wanted to keep. And we just saw that in the example where CLS was called in. Sometimes they don't get the right price for the home. And, I can give you some examples of that, where a home, was purchased for a very low value, $20,000, $30,000, and then a month or two later, it's flipped for $80,000 or $100,000 with no work. Every Philadelphia homeowner deserves to receive the market value of their home, especially today. And, in the United States and in Philadelphia, your home has been the biggest generator of wealth in families by far. So it's important that all of us keep this in mind and make sure that people get a fair price, especially when that time is right for them to sell. And as I've said before, and I'll say it again, making an offer to buy someone's home is not illegal. And it's certainly not illegal to sell your home for any price or for any reason you see fit. However, we have to be sure that everyone at the table is abiding by a shared set of standards and ethical rules that we all deem reasonable and responsible. Wholesalers currently work in the market with no real oversight, and it's time we establish some fair practices and oversight for them to abide by. A wholesaler, by the way, is not the same as an investor. An investor is someone who, or an entity, it could be a person or an entity that buys a home, usually with a real estate agent or an attorney, is held to standards set by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That's the real estate agent or attorney. And the investor invests money into the property by adding value. They might update a kitchen, a bathroom, remodel, do something to improve the value of the home. And that could take a few months to do that, and then they sell it down the road. A wholesaler is typically someone or an entity that buys a home with cash, with no standards for information sharing or behavior in the market. Their goal is to immediately sell the property at a higher price to an investor or home buyer. Where the good actors in the wholesaling business have existed, this is simply people who try to buy low and sell high in the market. But because this practice is based on that premise, it encourages wholesalers to look for sellers or areas of the city where they can take advantage of the market and the residents of Philadelphia. That's really the big issue here. The bad actors in this business are looking to take advantage of our residents, and they're really not making their money on the market. They're making their money on the lack of information of sellers. They're looking for those homeowners who lack that knowledge of the value of their homes. As we just saw in that example, $500, that's like unbelievable. Or have other financial issues, and the immediate cash is too attractive to question what the real value is. We've seen how many neighborhoods are targeted for this kind of activity and therefore are at risk for being taken advantage of by people who understand the market trends in real estate at a far greater level than our Philadelphia residents. You know, whenever I drive all over the city, you'll see, and I'm sure everyone on this, all my colleagues have seen these signs all over the city: cash for homes, we buy houses, and that's what's going on. Not everyone, but there's a lot of bad actors in this process. This bill will provide the following. 1, create a licensing system and a set of standards of contact for wholesale buyers. 2, explicitly prohibit unethical conduct by wholesalers by defining a code of conduct similar to those used for other real estate professionals. And 3, require a disclosure to the seller, informing the solicited homeowners of resources so they can evaluate the real value of their property or seek representation from a professional. 4, we are creating a do not solicit list of homeowners. And 5, establish enforcement mechanisms and penalties for those who violate these regulations. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to turn it back over to you, and I look forward to hearing from our partners in this effort, members of the public who have agreed to share their stories, and all the individuals that are here today to testify. Thank you. I look forward to working with my colleagues to educate our residents of Philadelphia and set these new standards for wholesalers doing business in Philadelphia. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Dom, and appreciate all your hard work on this legislation. Just for the record, that everybody knows, we have a hard stop because of the mayor's press conference at 12:30. So what we're going to do is, I know Councilmember Gautier has a question, but what we'll do is let people testify for this bill, and then we'll ask the questions right at the end after all the testimony is heard. Councilmember Gautier?
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to commend Councilmember Dom for his work on this bill. This is a huge issue in my district where neighborhoods are changing. Residents are harassed on a daily basis by text, by phone, the signs everywhere. I even saw one wholesaler designing their solicitations to look like parking tickets. So it's really kind of out of control. And I think this bill will go a long way towards letting people remain in the neighborhood in peace, if that's what they want to do, or get, what they deserve for their home. So thank you so much. And I also wanted to thank CLS and everyone else who worked hard on this.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. McMonagle, please lead the next witness, please.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, I want to echo Councilmember Gautier's point. Member Dom, this is a plague on our community, our district as well. I have seen wholesalers come into communities as if they were on safari, looking for the big deal opportunity to take advantage of often senior citizens who no longer can afford some of the maintenance and upkeep of their property and take pennies on the dollar to take advantage of them. I think this bill goes a long way in stabilization. Not that change should not come, but change should not come at the expense and exploitation of long-term residents. So I commend you as well.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. McMonagle, please read the next witness.
Rue Landau, please.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chairperson Squilla, Vice Chair Dom, for championing this effort, and members of the Commerce and Economic Development Committee for the opportunity to testify in support of Bill number 200544. I'm Rue Landau, Executive Director of the Philadelphia Commission on Human Relations. The Commission enforces the city's Fair Practices Ordinance, the law that prohibits discrimination in housing and real property, employment, and public accommodations. With me today is Sarah Adamo from License and Inspections, in case there are any L&I questions. Bill 200544 provides protections to homeowners and regulates the solicitation of purchases of real property by residential property wholesalers by expanding and strengthening the law and making it more relevant to current day housing practices. In the first half of the 20th century, Philadelphia was deeply affected by federally supported discriminatory housing and lending policies and practices that resulted in racially segregated neighborhoods. From redlining to blockbusting and white flight, the white suburbs grew and prospered while black and brown urban neighborhoods deteriorated with active disinvestment. These discriminatory practices did not become illegal until the passage of the Fair Housing Act in 1968. Regardless, the damage created by these practices continues. In the latter half of the century, as some of Philadelphia's neighborhoods have transitioned from disinvestment to gentrification, we have witnessed a new kind of blockbusting in Philadelphia, and exploitative individuals and companies have tried to cash in on that change. To offset the harmful effects of some of these practices, Philadelphia added a provision to its Fair Practices Ordinance, making it illegal for any real estate broker, agent, or its employees to solicit a property for sale after they are put on notice that the owner does not desire to sell the property. While that section of the law helped to protect homeowners for a while, the problem of unscrupulous housing solicitation has evolved today. A new set of unregulated actors called property wholesalers have entered the marketplace, seeking to buy and quickly flip properties for a profit. Property wholesalers bombard homeowners with solicitations through calls, emails, text messages, postcards, and flyers, as you've heard of already today. They make lowball offers and far too often mislead vulnerable homeowners about the legal consequences of documents they present for signing. Bad individual actors hide behind complex corporate structures, making it hard to hold them accountable. Homeowners need information about the value of their homes, transparency about the entities behind these schemes, and protection from the unfair practices that leave them displaced from their communities while losing significant equity from the value of their homes. Property wholesalers appear to target homeowners of color and the elderly. And since the family home is the primary source of generational wealth, stopping these abusive practices is a matter of racial and economic justice. The proposed changes contained in this bill today would address these problems. The bill has three primary goals: to license previously unregulated actors, to establish a code of conduct for property wholesalers, and to create a universal do not solicit list. And I know Councilmember Dom, Vice Chair Dom, went through the details of the bill. I hope you can cut me off if you need me to, but I wanted to just proceed with some of the details as well. Under the existing Fair Practices Ordinance, only real estate brokers and agents must honor a homeowner's request not to be solicited to sell or rent a property. The bill expands the scope of this protection to include any individual or entity engaging in the practice of soliciting a property for sale or rent. It also authorizes the commission or another entity to maintain a public do not solicit list of owners who have expressed a desire not to be solicited to sell or rent their properties. While we appreciate the potential effectiveness of a do not solicit list, We will need funding to create and maintain it. For licensing, the bill requires all property wholesalers to obtain licenses through the City of Philadelphia. The expanded definition of wholesalers in this section includes exceptions for the city and public officials, people or entities who purchase properties and substantially improve them for resale, and attorneys and licensed real estate professionals when acting within the scope of their licensed practice areas. To obtain a license, an applicant must supply a name and address, or if the applicant is not a natural person, supply the name and address of a responsible party, provide proof of insurance, and disclose any equity interests in other Pennsylvania corporations. A license may not be issued to an applicant convicted of a crime of fraud, dishonesty, and deceit in the past 6 years. For a code of conduct under the bill, the property wholesalers may not knowingly make any substantial misrepresentations or false promises, untruthfully advertise, or engage in any conduct which demonstrates bad faith, dishonesty, untrustworthiness, or incompetency. An applicant also may not knowingly give false or misleading information to obtain a license. Finally, it requires property wholesalers to provide homeowners with important disclosures 3 days prior to making an offer to purchase the property. The disclosure must inform the homeowner of resources that can be used to assess the fair value of residential properties, as well as information regarding the homeowner's rights to hire a real estate agent, to seek legal counsel, or other resources deemed appropriate. I want to give a quick shout out to the chair of our commission, Shalimar Thomas, who runs the North Broad Renaissance, who already did some of this outreach with these postcards they drop door to door, informing homeowners of all of the resources that they need in order to figure out the fair market value of their properties. Finally, just to touch on enforcement, along with the enforcement authority already vested in the Fair Practices Ordinance for the unlawful housing solicitation, the bill creates 2 new enforcement mechanisms. A violation of the prohibited conduct will be cause for the city to revoke or refuse a license. In addition, any agreement of sale entered into by a wholesaler who was not licensed at the time of solicitation may be rescinded at any time prior to the transfer of title to the property. Finally, any violation of any of these provisions is a Class 3 offense under the code, subject to fines. If passed as amended, the law will take effect on February 1st, 2021. Bill 200544 would significantly curtail the practice of unregulated property wholesalers who prey on low-income homeowners through speculation, gentrification, and modern-day blockbusting. It would provide homeowners who want to sell their properties the information they need to determine the fair market value of their home and key protections against unfair and deceptive practices. And homeowners who do not want to sell their homes will be protected from unwanted solicitation. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ruth, for your testimony. I'm hearing an echo. I'm not sure why that is. If everybody's on mute. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to switch. We have one person who needs to testify on bill number 200353. I'll ask Mr. McMonagle to call up Mr. Epps to have his testimony on that bill. And then we'll go back to, unfortunately, to bill number 200544. But Rue, thank you for your testimony. If there's any questions for Rue and the people who testified, we could hear them now, and then we'll go to Mr. Epps on bill number 200353. Seeing none. Okay, Mr. Epps, would you like just to state your name for the record, and then we'll go and give your testimony for bill number 200353?
Chairman Squilla and committee members, good morning. I am pleased to say that I have worked with most of you, and I am here in complete support of bill 200353. I presently serve as Senior Advisor for Economic Development at Bellevue Strategies. Prior to that, most of you are aware that I had the privilege to serve as the Commerce Director for the city under Mayor Kinney's in his first term. And prior to that, I was President and CEO of PRWT Services, one of the largest minority-owned firms in the country. And it's with all of those experiences that provides me ample perspective of the challenges that confront local and Black and brown businesses in their ability to compete and win business with the city of Philadelphia, and I would say in the region at large. So again, as a result of these experiences, I am in total support of Bill 200353. The reasons I'm in total support is the bill provides increased opportunity for local and Black and brown businesses to successfully compete and win contracts. The bill provides additional levels of accountability and transparency, and Lord have mercy, we sorely need that. And finally, the deck is stacked against Black and brown businesses, and they need all the support that the system can provide. And I think that this bill begins to provide additional levels of protection. So a longer testimony has been submitted. I've learned through coming before you in the past, don't need to read it. And I am open for any questions that you may have as I, again, affirm my support for this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Epps. And I know Councilmember Thomas was also on the line for this bill as the sponsor. Because we went out of order here, if there's any questions to Mr. Epps on this bill, I know there's other people to testify on this bill, but we have to go back to the previous bill because Mr. Epps has to leave. What we're going to do real quick is we're going to break into out of the hearing and go into a public meeting because a council member has to disperse, and then we're going to come back into the public hearing after we go into the meeting. So thank you all for your testimony up this point. I think what we're going to do now, this will conclude the hearing for the moment, and we'll go into a public meeting. Mr. McMonigle, could you please read the roll?
Okay, good afternoon. Councilwoman Brooks?
Present.
Councilmember Dom?
Present.
Councilmember Gautier?
Present.
Councilmember Gilmore Richardson?
Good morning, I'm present.
Councilmember Green? Councilmember Johnson? Councilmember Jones? You're muted.
Councilmember Jones is present.
Present.
Councilmember Jones. Councilman O.
Present.
And Councilman Squilla.
Present.
Okay, you have a quorum.
All right, a quorum of the committee members are present. The chair recognizes Councilmember Dom for a motion to approve the amendments to the bills that are being considered today. On page 5.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that bill number is at 200353, including any amendments that have been approved, be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation. And further move the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of these bills at the next session of council.
Second.
Hold on 1 second there. I think what we're going to do is we're going to read all the amendments to I think the amendments to bill number 200544 and 200574. The amendments.
Include those two?
Yes.
Okay, I'll redo it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that bills number 200353, 200544, and bill number 200574, including any amendments that have just been approved, be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move the rules of council be suspended from first reading of these bills in the next session of council.
All right, all right, the amendments to bills number 200544 and 200575 have been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, and the motion carries, and amendments have been approved. Chair again recognizes a motion that bills be considered for today. Councilmember Dom, on page 6.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Point of clarification for the administration and the witnesses. We are addressing the amendments so that Councilmember Dom can vote on the bills before he departs the hearing. Is that correct? Councilmember O?
Yes, correct.
Departing the hearing, right? Okay, so we are going to go back into testimony, but we're allowing Councilmember O to have an opportunity to vote on the bills.
That
and
is
then
correct.
we'll go back into the hearing. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, for that point of clarification.
Thank you. So we just approved the amendments, and now we're going to approve the bills. This will conclude the meeting, and then we'll go back into the hearing, even though the bills have been approved, and the amendments and the bills would have been approved.
So the first one was we approved the amendments, and now we're approving the amendments and the bills. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
I'll read it again. I move that bill number 200353, 200544, and 200574, including any amendments that have just been approved, be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation. Further move the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of these bills in the next session of council.
Second.
Thank you. The bills have been moved and properly seconded. The bills just read by the Councilman Dom, including any amendments that have been approved today, be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation is to further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit the first reading of these bills in the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 Could I interrupt, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
I'm sorry, because I seem to be the cause of this problem. I was seeking to be recognized simply to request being excused and voting, recorded as voting aye on all bills and amendments. I know that the committee has yet to hear the testimony on some of the bills and amendments, and that is actually, procedurally, I have read the bills. I am comfortable, my question is, do you want to have the committee hear the rest of the testimony before voting on the amendments and the bills?
I think we're voting them all out at this point, council member. And
Okay.
then we're going to go back into the hearing with the bills approved.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. And we also had Councilmember Green present also. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
The ayes have it, and the motion carries. That'll conclude our meeting, but we will go back into a public hearing. And Councilmember Green was present. We voted the amendments and the bills out of committee with a favorable recommendation to be read at the next session of council. We will go back to a public hearing to hear the testimony and to complete that hearing process. Thank you. Mr. McMonagle, can you please read the person testifying on bill number 200544 after Ms. Landau?
Yes, can we please have Tanetta Graham?
I am here.
Could you please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony?
Sure. My name is Tanetta Graham, and I thank you guys for hearing my testimony today on bill number 200544. One of the many plagues contributing to the decline in Black homeownership in Philadelphia is the predatory practices of the We Buy Home solicitors market. Since 2012, thousands of Black families in low-wealth neighborhoods have been targeted by this industry that uses pressure tactics and deceptive advertising to convince homeowners to sell their properties for less than market value. Strawberry Mansion, a predominantly Black community, is in the midst of a battle to educate and protect property owners against these wealth-draining entities. In Mansion, homeowners are inundated daily with street signs, door knockers, postcards, emails, phone calls, yes, even on cell phones, text messages, and canvassing caravans prompting them to sell their homes as is. The language in these communications range from super friendly, hi neighbor, I was just admiring your property, to very abrasive. This is my final attempt to reach you. The appearances range from a handwritten note to an official appearing note with a seal. Residents contact me often about these calls and letters. Seniors especially are taken in by the official look of the notices, and out of fear or pressure, they make a connection with one of the many players in the web, only to ultimately have them visit their homes and convince them to sign agreements of sales. These notices come so often that neighbors are concerned that they're being watched. They feel under siege, and they are more determined to stay in their homes. That's why the Strawberry Mansion CDC, of whom I am the president, began our Not For Sale community initiative with promotional hashtags, hashtag We're Here to Stay, hashtag Mansion Strong, and hashtag Save Our Homes. We need your help to make this initiative stronger. The passage of this bill will amend the Fair Practice Ordinance and allow it to apply to all wholesalers so that they will curb their harassing communication with residents who don't want to be bothered, especially with ghost entities. Quick cash offers are tempting and problematic for homeowners with vulnerable properties. Many homeowners find themselves entering into agreements with limited knowledge and thereby cheating themselves of income from their valuable asset. Strawberry Mansion CDC is encouraging them to explore options to stabilize their properties with programs like the Strawberry Mansion Historic Home Repair Program, basic system repairs, the RR&R loan, weatherization, etc., with the understanding that in Philly's housing market, the most affordable home is your own. Should a homeowner so choose to sell their asset, then we want to ensure that they are employing trusted services and garnering the best price for their property. I'll work with neighboring organizations, community legal services, and Councilman Alan Dobb to draft legislation that will regulate the industry and create standards and licenses like those in the realtor world, shows our commitment to empower citizens to make informed decisions. It's time for this work to be anchored in legislation like this that will require wholesalers to identify themselves, obtain a license, in addition to providing information on available homeowner assistance programs and giving the homeowner time to make the best choice. Enough is enough. Far too long, homeowners have been subjected to these unwarranted, unsolicited practices. It's time to put this industry on notice that we are not going to let them push the displacement, gentrification agenda without exposing their practices and providing legal protection and recourse for our residents. Thank you for your time and care and considering the passage of this legislation.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Appreciate your input. Are there any questions? I see that we have a comment from the Councilmember Joe Richardson.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I too wanted to commend my colleague, Councilmember Dom, for this legislation and his staff for all of their work. I have been very proud to co-sponsor this legislation and again wanted to thank Ms. Graham for all of her work with Strawberry Mansion CDC. My family is from that community and we have been inundated with calls, and I even received the text messages on my cell phone regarding my grandparents' property in the Strawberry Mansion community. So I just wanted to thank you, Ms. Graham, for the work of Strawberry Mansion CDC and Councilmember Don for this legislation, because it will make the difference for residents who have been long-time occupying home owners in that community. It's very stressful, particularly for the seniors who have lived there for a very long time, to be contacted through a variety of mediums. And I know that this legislation will set the ground rules and make the difference for all of them. So I just wanted to thank you so much for your work, and thank you so much to Strawberry Mansion CDC.
Thank you, Councilmember Richardson. Councilmember Dom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonette, I wanted to thank you also for your testimony today. And thank you to my colleague, Kathy Gilmore Richardson, council member, for your work on this and support. I really appreciate it. And I will say this, I'm getting texts from my own homes right now. I don't know what's going on, but this thing is out of control. So if we can get this resolved, I think it'll help everybody. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. McMonagle, please read the next person to testify.
Yes, can we please have Blondell Murphy, who is on the line?
Blondell, if you're there, just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. Maybe we go back to Ms. Murphy. Mr. McMonagle, when you please read the name of the next person to testify. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Can we please have Stephanie Bielo? I apologize.
Is there anyone else here to testify on bill number 200544?
Good afternoon. This is Marcos Lomelli. I'm here to testify on that bill. Thank you.
Marcus, just state your name for the record, and then you could proceed. And then I think we have Katie also after you. So go ahead,
Good morning. My name is Marcos Lomelli. I'm a program coordinator at SEVA. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to testify today on Bill 200544. SEVA is a coalition building Latino organization. Our mission is to promote the economic development of the Latino community and ensure their access to quality housing. In line with our mission, we're asking Council to pass this bill, as it will implement protections for homeowners in our community and help them preserve their homes and their wealth. As you know, Latinos have the highest rate of poverty of any ethnic group in Philadelphia. In the age of social distancing, when housing is essential to healthcare, this stat is especially worrying. According to reports from the Economy League and the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, Latino residents are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. Unscrupulous real estate and wholesale professionals have long known the usefulness of targeting the most vulnerable members of the Latino community. The promise of cash now can be very alluring to a senior that depends on an ever-dwindling Social Security check, or a family who has recently lost a loved one and does not know how to manage their property. However, for many families in our community, these homes are their only source of wealth. In the 19122 and 19133 zip codes, the heart of El Barrio, new zoning ordinances facilitating residential development in industrial zones and a planned rehabilitation of the North Philly Amtrak station have attracted aggressive development proposals that will soon transform our neighborhood's demographics. Rising property taxes and increasing population density, not to mention structural damage from adjacent poorly planned new construction, are destabilizing vulnerable homeowners. The unregulated wholesale real estate business is a major threat to long-time low-income homeowners who are the backbone of our culture and economy, especially elderly homeowners with limited English proficiency and their adult heirs. This bill will confirm the city's commitment to help prevent what little wealth our community has acquired from passing into the hands of faceless, soulless development companies whose sole interest is to make a quick buck. But we must go beyond that. We urge the city to work together with community-based organizations to ensure that our residents are well informed of their rights by providing fully bilingual guidance and official documentation. We have appeared before council many times in the past to ask for increased funding for housing counselors who work for these CBOs and who know their community's housing needs better than anyone. By leveraging our community ties, we can together empower homeowners with the knowledge to protect themselves from unwanted solicitations and ensure that wholesalers who do not follow the law are held accountable. This bill, if passed, will represent an important first step on the path to securing our community's economic future. We thank you for taking it up and for allowing us to testify on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcus, for your testimony. Kate, if you're there, if you want to state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony. Can you hear us? Okay. I see in the chat that Katie was there to testify on this bill, but if she comes back, we'll allow her to testify. If there's any other questions, is there anybody else left to testify?
Kate is on, but I don't know if she's muted.
Okay. *6 if you called in, I think, to unmute.
Good morning. My name is Blondell Murphy. Can you hear me?
Oh, Blondell. Okay, Blondell. Yes. Just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony on bill number 200544.
Certainly. My name is Blondell Murphy, and I am currently retired. In 1959, my parents purchased our family home on North 10th Street in North Philadelphia, just north of Temple University. I was 4 years old when they bought the house, and I lived there until I moved out when I was 21 years old. My father passed away in 1989. My mother passed away in 1997. After that, my siblings and I all inherited the family home. However, my older brother was living in the home alone. Unfortunately, my brother, who is now 81 years old, has memory loss. He has no knowledge of real estate. One day, a man came to my brother's house and placed a business card in the door. The man convinced my brother that my brother had the authority to sell our family home to this man. Even though my brother did have the authority, this man drove my brother in his car to City Hall and had my brother sign paperwork stating that my siblings and I had no interest in our family home. This was false. But my brother did not know any better. This man tricked my brother into signing papers to sell our family home for only $31,000. Now, I've been told that according to the website, Zulu.com, our family home is worth over $200,000. Later, my brother and I were talking, and he told me about the papers that he signed. We called the man and told him that we would not be selling the house. The man then filed a lawsuit in court to force my brother to sell the home to him. My brother and I needed to hire an attorney to force the man to drop his lawsuit against us. I support this bill in order to prevent other people from going through what we went through. Thank you very much for hearing my testimony.
Blondell, thank you so much for your testimony, and it speaks to the heart of why it's so important to have this bill heard today and pass council. Katie, are you available to testify? I see you trying to speak. It says you're unmuted. Not sure why I can't hear you. Yeah, that still can't hear you. We could hold to try to get your testimony. If you like, maybe you want to reboot your computer and then re-enter Teams. That may help to free up your microphone. And then we could come back and listen to your testimony. Give us a chat. Let us know in the chat if you're back, and we could try it then, but we still can't hear your audio. Okay. Mr. McMonagle, is there anybody else here, do we know, to testify on bill
Yes.
number 200544?
Yes, can we please have Stephanie Bielo or Bielo? I apologize. Stephanie, are you muted? I don't know if we're having issues because that's the second guest that we can't hear.
Modesto, is Modesto still on the line?
Yes, I am. It looks like Stephanie is in as guest and she is not muted.
I know, but she's speaking, but we can't hear her. It could be, it could be on their end. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Stephanie's hearing. If you could please just reboot your PC and just join us once again, that could fix the problem that she's having.
Yeah, sorry, Stephanie, we cannot hear your testimony. If you want to try to reboot, we will be hearing other testimony on other bills also. We'll allow you to testify. If you come back in, just let us know in the chat and we'll hopefully be able to hear you at that point. Mr. McMonagle and Councilmember Dom, if you have a comment, and then we'll get ready for the next bill.
I don't know if this is helpful. I have the testimony of both of these people. Do you want me to just read it for their benefit, or should we wait until they try to get back on?
Let's wait because I think they really would like to testify.
Okay.
And then if we can't get them, we'll add that at the end of the hearing, and we'll have you read that through.
Okay, I just wanted to mention something else. I wanted to thank Sarah Damo, our Legislative Affairs Manager and Zoning Administrator, for all her work on this bill, along with Rue Landau, of course, and along with CLS and GPAR. It was great to see a collaboration, and all my colleagues and everyone in the administration really worked hard on this as a team, which is really, I wanted to thank everybody for that and just give everyone a real special thank you. They did a great job. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We want to thank you, Council Member, too, because as you could hear from this testimony, how much this is needed. So thank you so much for that. Stephanie, want to try again? Yeah, we still can't hear you. All right, if you want to try to reboot your computer and then shut it down and then turn it back on and then see if you can get back into Teams and then we'll let you testify. If not, we'll have Councilmember Dom read your testimony. Thank you. Mr. McMonagle, please read the either next bill or next person to testify.
Yes, bill number 200353. Can we please have Stephanie Tipton?
From the administration. Stephanie, just state your name for the record. And I see we have Jeff Hornstein after you.
Sure.
Sorry about the technical difficulties.
No worries. Good morning, Councilmember Squilla, Chair of the Committee on Commerce and Economic Opportunity, Councilmember Dom, Vice Chair, other members of the committee, as well as the bill sponsors. My name is Stephanie Tipton. I am the Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Philadelphia. I'm joined by Monique Neesmith-Joyner, who is our Procurement Commissioner, and we are here to testify in support of Bill number 200353 as amended. I believe you all have the amendments that were circulated either last night or this morning. The Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, my office, the CIO, we are charged with oversight of the city's core administrative departments, including the procurement department. And we work to ensure that city services are efficient and effective, inclusive and equitable, transparent, and conducted with integrity. Additionally, the procurement department is the central purchasing and materials management agency for the city. Procurement's goal is to acquire services, supplies, equipment, and construction through a fair and open process and at the best value to the city. Procurement seeks to leverage the use of taxpayer dollars in a way that upholds trust by using sound procurement practices. Bill number 200353, as amended, updates the reporting requirements of Section 17109 of the Code entitled Local Business Preferences or Bidding Preferences by requiring the establishment of local business participation goals and regular reporting on the achievement of such goals as a way to assist local businesses in recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. The CAO and procurement strongly support any effort aimed at supporting local business entities, as well as minority, women, and disabled-owned businesses, and at promoting transparency and accountability. We recognize the importance of reinvesting locally and providing for an inclusive procurement process that provides greater access and transparency, particularly for businesses that have historically been disenfranchised. The CAO and the procurement department have led and supported various initiatives that are specifically aimed at increasing LBE and MWDSBE access to city contracting. So we certainly welcome the addition of this bill. We have worked with the Office of Economic Opportunity, as well as Councilmember Green, to develop the Local Business Purchasing Initiative, or LBPI for short. Councilmember Green sponsored an amendment to Section 8200 of the Charter, which was approved by the voters in November 2019. And what that does is it raises the formal bid threshold required for contracts from $34,000 to $75,000, and from $34,000 up to $100,000 for opportunities that are only open to certified local business entities. The procurement department developed regulations as companion to this legislation that require departments to actively solicit at least 3 minority, women, or disabled-owned or alternative diverse businesses as part of these solicitations. And the regulations also require that we provide additional annual reporting on LBE and MWDSBE participation on any of the contracts that are issued under the LBPI program. It officially launched this fall, and I'm happy to report that LBE applications have already increased despite the pandemic and economic conditions. Additionally, I'm happy to also report that as part of this initiative, we launched a Contracts Hub website on the phila.gov homepage, which makes it easier to search for opportunities with the city. It really serves as a central location to search for listings of both professional services and procurement opportunities, as well as successfully navigate the contracting process, including how to register as a local business entity or minority, women, or disabled-owned business entity. Additionally, the procurement department also reports on performance metrics related to the award of LBE contracts. In FY20, 62% of all public works projects were awarded to a local business entity. Additionally, in October of 2018, the city issued a policy establishing the Local Contract Opportunity Review Committee, which reviews most professional services and non-public works best value RFPs that are valued at $2 million or more to ensure that these RFP are maximizing opportunities for local diverse business entities. With the implementation of this bill, it will work in conjunction with these other initiatives in order to grow and increase participation by local businesses. The CAO and procurement will work very closely in partnership with the Office of Economic Opportunity to develop the LBE goal, which will take into account findings from OEO's disparity study and existing minority, women, and disabled-owned business goals, and also leverage OEO's existing systems and processes. We're committed to collaborating with City Council, OEO, and Commerce, as well as diverse and local businesses and other stakeholder organizations to maximize LBE and MWDSBE participation on city contracts. This concludes our testimony, and we are happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Stephanie, for your testimony. Mr. Hornstein, are you available to testify on this bill?
I am, my friend.
Thank you. Sorry for the delay, and thank you for being here to testify. Just state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
I'm Jeff Hornstein, Executive Director of the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia. So good morning. Is it still morning? Yeah. Good morning, Chairperson Squill and members of the committee. I'm Jeff Hornstein. I run the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia. We're a 110-year-old nonpartisan independent think and do tank, supported by a board of nearly 60 area enterprises that represent a true cross-section of our region's economy. As several folks have referenced some of the reports we do, we produce nonpartisan, independent research and analysis aimed at helping you all make data-informed decisions. But we also run several programs designed to advance racial equity, promote innovation, and build what we call civic muscle across our region. So glad to be here to testify on this bill. As Stephanie knows, we have done a lot of work on promoting local procurement, and I'll just talk a little bit about that in a minute. But really, to us, the question at hand this morning from our point of view is whether one can manage what isn't measured. If it's the intention of the city of Philadelphia to use its hundreds of millions of dollars in annual purchasing power to promote inclusive growth and shared prosperity, especially in a city, as we all know, that's marked by unconscionably high poverty rates among its Black and brown residents, as well as tremendous racial wealth gaps, only made worse, of course, by the ongoing pandemic. And it was heart-wrenching to sit through this hearing and listen to the predatory practices of folks getting their homes stolen, and our good friend Ellen Yin talking about the plight of the restaurant industry before that. You know, we're in a general crisis here, and anything the city can do to help is definitely worth looking at. So if we're going to use procurement as a lever, we need to set ambitious but justifiable targets, but we also have to really check and track progress. One of the things I like about these amendments is that it bakes constant improvement into its accountability rubrics so that these gaps begin to close. And I think it goes without saying right now, but we will never close our gaps and deal with the structural racism that has been at the heart of our economic divide if we are not going to help our Black and brown residents reach their economic potential. So Bill 200353, as amended by Councilmember Thomas, aims to accomplish these important accountability provisions. So the Economy League urges Council to adopt it with a few caveats. One, that there be an accurate and granular accounting by diversity category. We've seen far too many instances, both in the public and private sector, where diversity, where WBEs, MBEs, and other categories are lumped together. We need granular reporting. We really need to understand in this particular moment how our Black and brown owned businesses in the city of Philadelphia are benefiting from the local purchasing initiative. Also, we would suggest that local be defined in wealth building terms. That is, do the revenues flow to Black and brown owners who will reinvest in their communities? That's the whole point of this work. So we really need to keep the focus on that, and whatever reports are put out need to keep that squarely in mind. That we also need to track whether local firms are growing and whether we are forming new firms due to these efforts. Because if we're just recycling dollars to the same 8 or 10 firms, we are not really going to be creating new wealth and new opportunity. And finally, I'll say this, and this is really important based on my years of experience working with OEO and others. And obviously Harold Epps is one of my mentors in this role, and Sylvie's doing a great job, and so is Iola. But we really need to be reinvesting and investing in programs that help local firms, particularly those owned by people of color, develop the capacity they need to compete effectively, to grow, to create jobs and wealth. Because if we are just supporting the same 8 or 10 firms that get a lot of the contracts, we're not moving the needle forward. So we applaud the city for this initiative. As many of you know, for several years, we've been the backbone organization behind Philadelphia Anchors for Growth and Equity, or PAGE, an initiative that has worked to encourage large institutional purchasers like our world-class hospitals and universities and headquartered corporations to spend more of their billions of dollars in annual spend with Black and brown-owned local firms. This summer, we held a procurement roundtable that brought together Aramark, CHOP, Comcast, Drexel, Independence, Jefferson, PECO, Penn, and Temple with a shared goal of increasing local spend. And these institutions are stepping up to the plate, pledging tens of millions of dollars in spend shifting. My colleague Janelle Lawrence, who couldn't be with us this morning, runs our PAGE initiative. Has been working tirelessly to pull together a series of spend shift plans. And we'll be releasing a report shortly on the aggregate spend shifts, but it will be in the tens of millions of dollars of shifts from majority-owned, out-of-town corporations to local Black and brown-owned businesses, something we're very proud of. And it's been great to get to know Stephanie and Monique and other folks in the procurement apparatus in the city as they have sat in on our procurement directors meetings and really learned from some of the best like Comcast and Penn and Independence about how to do this work and CHOP. Again, pledges are only meaningful if there's accountability and a plan to continually move the needle. Harold Epps and Maria Roberts are the co-chairs of our PAGE initiative, and they're keeping us honest. But it's critical that when we find categories in which local firms lack capacity, that we build structures to help folks out. So we've got a program called PAGE Prep and another called PAGE Capital that are helping provide firms the business support and capital they need to survive. So again, I am heartened by the conversations we've been having recently with public and private entities that are looking at themselves in the mirror, asking how they can use their purchasing power to advance racial equity in our region. And again, we commend the city for its seriousness of stated intent, and we look forward to helping to hold it accountable. This amendment's a welcome tool toward that goal. So I thank you, Chairman Squiller, Councilmember Thomas, for these amendments, Vice Chair Dom, and all the other folks on this committee for the opportunity to speak today. You're on mute, Mark.
Thanks, Jess. Thank you for your testimony. Councilmember Thomas, would like to be recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to briefly say thank you to all the different partners who helped make this bill where it is today. The coronavirus crisis has created a number of problems, and we talk often about the physical one. I know I do a lot of screaming and hollering about the impact it has on our children, but we all have to take a deep look at the fiscal side and try to do our part to help reinvest in Philadelphia. And I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone's support. I think this is a step in a direction, along with several other bills that's been passed. But hopefully this gets added to the list as bills that shows our intentional effort to reinvest in Philadelphia, support Philadelphia businesses, and assure that we come back stronger and better once we beat this coronavirus crisis. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you. Thank you to all the partners. Thank you to the committee members. And of course, thank you to everybody who came to testify in regards to this bill. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you, Council Member. I appreciate all your work on this bill. Is there any other questions for the testifiers panels? Seeing none, Mr. McMonagle, is there anybody else to testify on this bill?
So we have, is Monique Nesmith Joyner going to testify, or was she included in Stephanie's testimony?
I am present, but I was included in Stephanie's testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique.
Sure.
All right. We also have Malcolm Ingram then.
Sean, I apologize. This is Dave Maynard from Councilmember Thomas's office. Malcolm, the African American Chamber and the Philly Chamber both had to leave because of the meeting schedule.
Thank you, David. Sorry about that. I guess we can jump back to those that wanted to testify on bill number 200544 then.
Yeah, I think Katie, you want to try, Kate, to see if, and then Stephanie after Katie. Katie, we still can't hear you.
I also called in.
Oh, good. I can hear you call in. All
Hello,
right,
everyone.
There's a will, there's a way. Thank you. Councilmember Donald
Yes.
also willing to read testimony, but we wanted to hear from you. So thank you. If you want to state your name for the record, then you can proceed with your testimony.
I appreciate that, and thank you for your patience. My name is Katie McGrath. I am a realtor and the director of operations and a partner at Elfont Wissahickon Realtors, a real estate firm with 5 offices throughout the Philadelphia area. I'm also a parent of 2 boys attending public schools in the city. I'm a Germantown lifer and an advocate for my community and my industry. I'm very happy to speak to you today in support of Bill 200544. I believe that our role as realtors is to defend the equity of the Philadelphia homeowner. We work hard to support and increase homeownership and help build and preserve the intergenerational wealth that comes with it. We, as licensed real estate professionals, have a fiduciary responsibility to act in an open, honest, and competent way towards the best financial result for our clients. Predatory home buyers do not carry those requirements or responsibilities, and in most cases are actively working against the best financial interests of the sellers they relentlessly pursue. Unethical wholesalers are depressing property values and stripping wealth from vulnerable communities and depriving the city of much needed tax revenue in the process. Not only are most equitable interest sales undersold, but these are essentially assignments of contracts not subject to transfer tax. There is a time and place for selling your property to a wholesaler. There is a value you can assign to the speed and ease of a quick, no questions asked cash transaction, but there are opportunity costs. Consumers deserve representation no matter whom they are selling to and should be empowered to make informed decisions without pressure and with full knowledge of the facts. Again, licensed real estate professionals abide by disclosure laws, ensuring a seller knows the potential market value of their home prior to sale. Realtors abide by a code of ethics with a disciplinary process in place for any who might violate this code. State advertising regulations require identifying any realtor involved with their brokerage name and number prominently displayed with much more information than you'd find on the We Buy Houses bandit sign on a telephone pole with a throwaway phone number. Bill 200544 does not restrain trade. It asks the city to hold these wholesalers to reasonable professional standards. It asks wholesalers to stand by the service they offer and to perform it ethically and in a transparent manner. The tactics of these predatory homebuyers are that, predatory. They discourage consumers from seeking representation with a promise of saving money, when in fact they hope to prevent sellers from accessing free information that shows the fair value of their home. Our duty is to protect the interests of our clients and make our best efforts to help sellers obtain that fair market value. Addressing this issue will require more than just this bill, but it is a really important start. Fighting predatory home buying requires a multi-pronged approach. This legislative remedy, in concert with community engagement and an educational campaign, will protect homeowners and their families, will keep homeownership rates high, values protected, and ensure there is a recourse for sellers who may have fallen prey to deceptive or high-pressure tactics. It has been a true partnership between Community Legal Services and GPAR, respectfully including voices of stakeholders in neighborhood associations and the business community. It adds sunlight, the best disinfectant, on practices that frankly do not hold up to basic scrutiny. I thank the team at Councilman Dom's office, at the Greater Philadelphia Association of Realtors, and at Community Legal Services for this thorough and thoughtful legislation. These wholesalers should not represent the real estate profession, undermining consumer confidence and depriving families of the fair value of their home. I urge the members of the committee to approve the bill, and thank you very much for your consideration and for letting me try 3 times.
Well, thank you, Katie, for your testimony. I know it's been a challenge with you and Stephanie on there, but we want to hear the voice of all the people out there. And I brought to my attention one of our RCOs, one of our community groups up in Harrogate. They actually give a gift card to the people who bring in the most bandit signs. Bandit signs are illegal in the city of Philadelphia. So whoever brings in the most gets a gift card every month. So the people out there are actively collecting them. And so hopefully that doesn't allow these people to prey on some of our most vulnerable folks. So thank you for your testimony. Stephanie, are you able to speak?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Wonderful.
We hear you.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you, Chairperson Mark Squilla and members of the Committee on the Commerce and Economic Development. My name is Stephanie Biello, and I am a realtor in the city of Philadelphia, and I am the 2020 president of the Greater Philadelphia Association of Realtors, GPAR. With more than 3,000 hardworking members throughout the region, GPAR has served as the voice of real estate in Philadelphia since 1908. We have a proven track record of advocating for policies that protect the rights of private property owners and benefit the entire city, not just our realtor community. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today in support of Bill number 200544, which seeks to create a licensing requirement for individuals and entities engaging in wholesaling of residential property in the city of Philadelphia and requires certain disclosures by such wholesalers. The bill also proposes to expand the rules regarding the solicitation of purchases of real property. We are in favor of the bill, as we believe the bill provides protections for property owners and makes property owners' rights stronger. Through our research, member engagement, and our collaboration with Community Legal Services, We have determined that certain entities and individuals who are in the business of wholesaling are engaging in predatory home buying practices. These wholesalers are typically preying on property owners, among other people, who are financially constrained, elderly residents, or property owners struggling to pay their mortgage. Additionally, our research has shown that these predatory home buying practices are more prevalent in minority and low-income neighborhoods of the city. Typically, a wholesaler exploits the vulnerability of a property owner's circumstances and offers to buy their property at a significantly lower price compared to the fair value of the property. This practice results in property owner losing generational equity, an increase in gentrification, and the loss of appropriate transfer tax revenue to the city of Philadelphia. We consider such practice unethical and against the Realtor Code of Ethics, which expressly prohibits realtors from engaging in predatory home buying practices and requires realtors to have a fiduciary duty to represent their client to the best of their abilities. For a realtor, failure to adhere to the Realtor Code of Ethics may result in censure and fine, thereby providing appropriate checks and balances in our profession. Unlike real estate agents, realtors, who are also licensed real estate agents and attorneys, certain wholesalers do not adhere to any process, regulation, or ethical guidelines to conduct their business. Therefore, the bill proposes to require the wholesalers to apply for a license to conduct wholesaling business and provide certain disclosures to property owners. The purpose of the bill is threefold. Firstly, to identify the wholesalers conducting their wholesaling business in the city of Philadelphia. Secondly, to require the licensed wholesaler to provide disclosures to property owners upon solicitation that states the various options a property owner has for seeking advisory opinion from an attorney or a licensed real estate agent, and resources to research the fair value of their property before the property owner makes a decision to sell their property. And lastly, to protect the property owner's right from predatory home buying practices. We would like to thank the Community Legal Services and Councilman Alan Dunn and his staff for working with GPAR to draft the bill. We believe the bill is a result of a robust and a year-long collaborative process that included various stakeholders with Neighborhood Community Development Corporation, nonprofits, and city officials. We believe the bill is a model legislation for other states, cities, and counties in the country to replicate. We have already been contacted by local and state realtor associations about the bill and the drafting process that we undertook. Therefore, we urge the members of the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development to approve the bill with a favorable consideration and move it through legislative process. Thank you for your consideration of the thoughts expressed by me and on behalf of GPAR.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for your patience and willingness to work through the technical difficulties. I know Councilmember Dom wants to be recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, I want to thank everybody for their testimony today. And I also want to do a little shout out to Stephanie Tipton, who had a new baby boy in July. Congratulations, Stephanie, on behalf of all of us, and welcome back. It's great news.
Thank you. And
we'd like to see a picture of the baby, by the way, on the screen, if you can get the baby there.
He is thankfully napping. And I also just want to say, since you brought it up, Councilman Squilla, your wife was in the delivery room with me, and she was absolutely amazing and wonderful and took so many pictures for me and my husband. So I just want to put that on the record. She was such a lovely, wonderful person to have there. So.
Great. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing constituent services. I will take that.
Yes, we work all angles. So thank you. And Councilmember Dom, thank you. And thank Councilmember Thomas and for these bills, and Councilmember Heenan. It's really important to see how council is working even through in these tough times, making sure that we're paying attention to what is needed here in the city of Philadelphia. If there's any other questions or comments? Seeing none, that will end our hearing. I want to thank everybody. If you weren't on previously, we did go into a public meeting and we voted all bills out with a favorable recommendation to be heard in the next session of council. All members who were present had voted unanimously. So thank you all for your time today and efforts, and looking forward to continue working together. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and colleagues. Thank you.